Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask a Creative. Today, I have a longtime friend of mine, creative counselor and coach Helen Harrison. Welcome, Helen.
Hello, thank you, Michelle. That's beautiful.
I am really, really excited about today's chat because I know how much experience that you have as a counselor and a coach, but also as a creative person. You have lots of your life that are very creative. Why is that so important?
Oh, good question. Because it's so important because the creative juices is what keeps me inspired, excited, passionate, motivated. If I'm not creative, my vibration becomes lower, a bit dull, a bit hum. This is why I could never work for anybody because I'm always creating, evolving, changing. It's really, really important to me.
I remember one of the things that you said to me when I used to work at the bank was the more I go in the direction of my dreams and where I'm meant to be, the harder it's going to be to keep working at the bank where I know that it wasn't meant to be. And I always remember you telling me, oh, because there's just this like magnet that happens
Yeah,
as a creative
yeah,
person. Like even if you don't want to, you're drawn
yes.
to different creative things. So in your experience, why do you think creative people kind of struggle to get a balance in their life?
Oh, because if we have a look at society, it's all about doing, do. And it's a very forward moving energy. It's a very masculine energy. But to be creative, it's got to come from inward. And that's a much slower energy. It's a much more nurturing energy and it's a much more feminine energy. And so, particularly if you have a busy household, if you've got young children, balancing that up is really difficult. So it's having daily practices to constantly get out of the head. You're not meant to work it all out. It's being able to drop into the body and be. And that's where the pull of creativity comes from. You don't have to work it out, do you? You would know better than anybody.
Absolutely. It just kind of happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's the biggest mistake with your coaching and counseling service? What's the biggest mistake that you see creative people making?
It would be that you're meant to have it all worked out and know what it is. And I think, because often, I do coaching. So coaching is very much what's your vision and then your purpose and your values around that. And you have a picture of what it's going to be. And that's really, really good. However, to be creative, it's evolving and changing. And it's sort of dropping in and out of both. Uh, if you ask me, what is my most happiest creative time? It's when I whether it's a meditation or whether it's music, because I'm a type A and I'm a bit full on personality, it's like I am at my most creative when I get out of all of the doing and I just drop in. And it's like this well of absolute grace and source and whatever you want to call it, universe. And that's where my creativity comes from. And it's not out of the head. It's very deep within me. And so I write, and the stuff that comes out of my writing afterwards when I read it, I think, well, where the hell did that come from? It's not my head. And I think you would appreciate this. And I think anybody who's creative, it's not man-made, it's not from the head, it's deep within yourself. It's a calling, it's a yearning. And I think it's our job while we're in our bodies on this planet is to actually really honor that in ourselves. That's what gets me going, and that's creativity for me.
Absolutely, it sure is. And I think I wish we could have some sort of coaching for kids, especially in primary school. When I do a lot of school visits and we make up stories or try and do something in the workbooks, so many of them either won't start because they don't want to do the wrong thing, or they like, I hate rubbers. I wish I could tell teachers not to bring rubbers with them to the workshops, just to pencil and paper, because they're so focused on perfectionism. And I know that
Yes.
was, I struggled with that as a kid. I needed to be the good girl, and I needed
Yeah.
to be perfect all the time. And I see the perfectionism that's
Mm.
running through our kids. Why do you think that is? Why is the world so hung up on being perfect or getting it right?
I think so much of our programming and our conditioning is from outside of ourselves. And we are taught from a really young age to look outside and seek approval. Am I good enough? Am I doing this right? Am I being quiet enough, loud enough, big enough, whatever? And so the programming, the conditioning is in us. And then, we get into adulthood. You are we just keep going with that programming until you end up going, okay, well, this is not working for me. And you either see a counselor or a coach or work with somebody to cut that programming, because it's not to look outside of yourself. It is, where on earth did it come from that our sense of worth is outside of ourselves? And that is our programming. And, we were just talking earlier, I'm out of a 30-year marriage, and what a gift my ex-husband was, because for such a large part of that marriage, my sense of worth was dependent on him. If he told me I was good, well, happy days, I'm good. And if he was having a bad day, well, I'm not good. Oh man, that's crap. So I've been able to move that programming, and my sense of worth is not dependent on a soul. And so it starts in childhood. When I do psychotherapy with adults, where a very large part of the time we go, it's back into the classroom and back into the kids in the classroom and the teacher, and where that feeling of not good enough began.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think, especially for creative kids, because
Oh,
there's not enough modeling for a start for creative kids. There's heaps of sports people who, you can look up to, but there's really not enough modeling for creative kids. But also the nature of what we do, like we're creating products that's almost like we're chopping out little pieces of ourselves and putting it into what we do. So how do you help creative people who really have that imposter syndrome, that I'm not good enough or what I do doesn't matter?
well, it comes back to working on your belief system. So, how are you sabotaging yourself? What are the beliefs? How is that playing out? What are you doing? So, look, I've got lots of different ways, whether it's psychotherapy or whether it's coaching, whether it's counseling, it doesn't really matter. It's just dependent on that person and where they are in their healing journey. But you've got to let go of all of that. Easier said than done. I mean, I've been at this for decades. You know, but it's being able to stand in your own innate power and trusting yourself instinctively, and from there, that's where all the creativity happens. And where I just went when you were talking, I know when I wrote my book, which you were instrumental in getting me started, because yeah, I had that imposter syndrome. Who am I to be writing a book? And I remember you met with me a few times and was so encouraging. But when I wrote my book, I had to hold on to it for a while before I could put it out in the world, because I felt, yes, it's so freaking true what you're saying. It's a little part of you. So I had to work through all of the energy and the emotion that was connected with that book and let it go. You either like my book or you don't like my book. And that was, as a creative person, to write a book. And it wasn't a personal book, it was just a self-esteem tool book. But it is so true what you're saying. It's a little part of you that you're putting out in the world, and oh my God, you freaking see me. And it's confronting.
Yes, so confronting. It's like, and then you add social media on top of that, which we're probably the first generation of creatives who've had to deal with social media and trying not to look at what other people are doing, and, comparison. I know that's something that we've talked about before, how hard it is to try and stay on your own path and go, well, I'm not looking at what they're doing because I'm just toddling off on my own journey. How do you think all of that is impacting creative people?
Oh, massively. Because and I know for me, I've had to set really strong boundaries in my own personal rules about how long I step in, step out. You compare and, oh gosh, that looks good. And all of that dilutes what is coming from inside you. And glancing, but actually on that, I am stepping out and I'm sort of standing out as me now. I'm branding me, and it's confronting, it's being vulnerable, it's being authentic, it's a bit scary. However, in that, because I've sort of hidden under my banner of my business, and now it's so I really get. And so what would I say to that is, yeah, glance in, but do your own road, do your own path, do what is innately right for you.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, isn't it? A lot of the time, creative people don't even know what they want. Like I'll say to them, "What can I do to help you?" And they're like, "I don't know." Because it's hard to tap into that part of yourself. And even talking to creative mums who struggle, like you were saying before, to put time in the diary to say, "No, this is my time." I'm
Mm.
having those feelings of being selfish because you're taking half an hour away to write or be creative. It's so tricky, and I hate the term balance. I think we need to find a different term, but balance. But try, like what you were talking about, honoring all the different parts of yourself. I think that's really important too. So, what advice would you have for creative people who are watching, who are really resonating with what you're saying about being stuck because they're not being their true, authentic self?
Carve out a little bit of time somewhere in your day and just, I think, a journal practice. I'm sure you can appreciate that. My journal, I still journal to this day, and I think I've journaled for about 20 something years. It's one of the most therapeutic tools, and it's about tapping in and having a deep relationship with yourself. So you may have a busy life at the moment and don't have that space, but you know what? If you can't find 5 or 10 minutes, you've really got to ask yourself the question what you're doing. Uh, and it's just from there that will begin to grow. And carving out that little bit of space and time, because creativity doesn't blossom in busyness, in doing, in inactivity. It just doesn't.
It took me a long time to learn that. I was doing all these things because I thought that I wasn't busy enough. And then these busy things were actually keeping me from doing the big important stuff. Or when something came along that was like really awesome, I was had these silly little busy things that I'd invented to make me feel busy. And I really struggled with that, giving myself space to
Yeah.
just wait and let the good stuff come.
Yeah. And then in time start adding rituals, So I call it my queendom. I've got a room at home and, my little pink blanket, my cup of tea and my candles and my crystals and my diary. And yeah, I have adult children, so I have that luxury. But that is something I started even when the boys were at home. Because as I began to value myself, I began to value the sacred time that I needed. It's all about coming home and landing. Home is not out there, it's inside. And then when you can allow that and be with that, beautiful things come from it. It's just, it blossoms. It's like planting a seed, isn't it? And it begins to blossom if you fertilize it and given that time and energy. I could talk to you about this all day. This is a
I know.
really good topic.
I, I think we need to actually have like a whole nother thing. Yeah, just on that. But thank you so much for taking the
Oh,
time to chat to me today about creativity and how we can schedule time in our diary. I like
yeah.
for me, you've always been such a huge inspiration and such a wonderful sounding board. If anybody is watching this and really connected with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So either on my website, Power of Change, or on Helen Harrison website, and from there's Facebook and YouTube and all of the usual.
Oh,
But just Power of Change or Helen Harrison, and yeah, there'll be something there. that may
Yeah,
grab.
I'll put links to those in the comments as
Okay.
well. So
Thank you.
if you're watching today and you really resonated with Helen, I will make sure that there's links so you can get in contact with her. I can personally recommend her services. She's amazing. My friends have used her coaching services. So please, if you are a creative and you are struggling and what we've talked about today has really resonated with you, please reach out. There are people who can help you. And I would love to have you back, Helen, to talk more about all of the different aspects of how we can help
Oh,
creatives.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Helen, for joining us. And don't forget to join us for another episode of Ask a Creative.